Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper in regards to a video that I created giving you some writing tips as to how I am incorporating writing within our homeschool journey for my fifth grader who was enrolled in public school from pre-K through the fourth grade. And during our public school journey, we did something called afterschooling or part-time homeschooling. And all that basically means is after school, I would serve as his tutor. I would ensure that he not only understood the work that the public school gave him, but I sprinkled in some other concepts based on what he knew or what he didn't know. And then also on the weekends, we would take an hour or two and we would do some interest-led learning. And then during the summer, we would do a whole homeschool program for about 2 months, focusing on all the core areas. And we also did the same thing sometimes for a day or two during some holidays in which the public school system gave the students a vacation period. So today's video is to just basically give you some tips that you can use while your students are enrolled in public school, or you can use these tips in bringing in writing within your homeschool. Okay, you don't need a curriculum, you don't need any one particular program to really do this, but if you are interested in any one particular program, please do your research. I have videos that kind of explain to you how to research curriculum and how to kind of help you make the right decision in choosing the right program for your kids. Depending on the age of your child, depending on their capability, depending on their experience with writing, dependent on how much information they know in terms of, vocabulary and how imaginative or creative they are, may have a direct impact on their ability to really write good sentences and good stories and things of that nature. So these are just some tips I want you to consider. Write them down if you so choose, and kind of determine which ones best suits your needs and the needs of your son or daughter and your homeschooling style. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is gold. There is no one particular curriculum out there that's better than the other, because you may have to pull in resources, supplements, or you may have to use more than one curriculum to get what you're looking for, right? So again, I hope these tips are useful. I hope you find benefit to them. So let's go ahead and get started. Consider allowing writing to allow your student to express themselves. Allow them to just have free thought without revision. Allow them to put their thoughts, however that may translate into words. Allow them to put those thoughts into words on paper without you, parent, critiquing it. And that's important because as we are teaching our children how to write and how to pull from experiences and how to pull from their memory bank, we don't want to cause frustration or reluctance in the writing process, because a lot of students, and think of yourself, you may take it very personal when you receive criticism or negative feedback when something you believe was awesome, or when you pour your heart into something. So instead of having formal writing that's critiqued throughout the year, consider giving your children the opportunity to just free write and express themselves however that may come across. And if you see me looking over, I'm looking at my timer because I don't want this video to be too long. Another tip is to participate within the process of writing. If you give your son or daughter an assignment, consider doing that assignment with them. If you tell them to write this type of essay, or if you tell them to write this type of sentence or a short story or a poem or whatever it is, depending on where your children may be at any one particular time, consider writing with them. Write the short story as well. Write a sentence as well. Write the paragraph as well, in effort to model the process for them. What does good writing look like? Think about this. In life, we teach our kids how to do everything else, how to properly throw a football, how to properly tackle, how to cook a certain type of meal, how to bake cookies so that they are warm and that they are just perfect when they come out. We teach them how to kick a ball, how to do various strokes when they're swimming. But when it comes to writing, we don't take the same approach. Why? It's all about modeling. You want to support your children in the process or in the journey of writing by doing it with them, right? That just makes them feel as though they're not in this on their own. And when you are writing with them, you may feel or realize that you have some anxiety too, because you're trying to think about the right word, or you're trying to think about the perfect title, or you're trying to think about the mechanics along with the grammar, along with the structure, all at the same time. And sometimes if you are not a natural writer where things don't just come out, it may take you a little bit of time. So you're going to share that anxiety with your child and kind of help them understand why they're feeling that way, and help them also understand that you're going to be right there beside them, going through the process as well, and showing them more effective ways to kind of minimize that anxiety. Another aspect of writing is reading. Did you know that? It's really important for you to read aloud to your children, and for your children to also read books on their own. In addition to that, instead of giving them written book reports, try to sprinkle in some narration. Have them talk back to you. Have them narrate what they're reading about, and have them narrate what they're learning about. You may not want to ask any one particular question. What is the story about? Who are the characters? What's the main idea? You may not want to look at it from that perspective. You can just ask your son or daughter, hey, what are you reading? And they will, especially if they like the book, they're going to tell you everything about the book. They're going to laugh with you, and you may not get the jokes that they're talking about, but allow them to express themselves in narration form. And if you find that your children are coming to you as they're reading the book, put the phone down, put the laptop down, especially when they're younger. You can get back to that. Listen to them and engage and participate in that discussion with them. Okay? The next tip is to be a coach, be a support system. And when I say that, I mean be sincere about it, right? Have you ever read something from your child and in your mind you're saying, this is horrible? What in the world? Like, there's no sentence structure, the grammar is off, you're in the 5th grade and you should know that, or you're in the 7th grade, it should not look like this, or you in the 3rd grade, I thought this would sound better. Go and read what a 3rd grade writing, what 3rd grade writing for a traditional student looks like, and go with the 7th grader and a 9th grader and a 5th grader, 1st grader, and kind of understand what it should look like, because we may have higher expectations for our children and we bring reluctance and fear into the process because we're expecting so much, and you don't realize what it should really sound like at that age level. Okay, so be a support system, be a coach for your children. And also, when I say be sincere about it, when you are reading an original piece from your child, consider if you're going to give them positive feedback, give them the positive feedback and allow them to marinate on that, which means allow them to sit in that pride, okay, for a day or two before you jump back in and you give them negative feedback. So don't say, oh, so-and-so, this was really great about your writing. I really appreciated this and that, and you were really detailed there. Great job. But over here, your grammar needed this, and over here, it needed that. And that you just basically allowed your child to be excited, and they came back down It doesn't matter if you do it the opposite way, if you give them the negative feedback first and then the positive feedback. The point is to be sincere about it. Give them the positive feedback, let them marinate, sit in it for a day or two, and then come back and give them the negative aspects or the critiques that you may have. Don't butter them up just to give them bad news. You wouldn't like that if someone did that to you, right? The next tip is to respect your child's authority over their original work. It's their work. It's not yours. Don't take it over and try to make it sound like you, or turn it into an end product that represents you or your expectation for that child based on their age or grade level. It's their work. They have the authority. It's their original piece. And if they don't want to change it because they think it's great, guess what? They don't want to change it because they think it's great. Move on to another assignment and then work from there. Let's go back to the critique. Here's another tip. If you are critiquing your son or daughter's work, I would say especially in the elementary ages, whenever you start writing to fourth, maybe fifth grade, when you are critiquing their work, or even in middle school, if you are just getting them into writing in middle school, this also works here too. If you are critiquing their work, consider not critiquing like everything at one time because it's overwhelming. Think about this. If you were at work, your boss gave you an assignment and he gave you that and you did that assignment, you poured your heart into it, you double checked, you thought it was great, and then they give you that assignment back and it has nothing but red marks on it, how would you feel? You would have a lot of emotions that are going on. The first thing is, I know my stuff sounds good. I know that's right. My boss wants me to write like them, or my boss wants me to sound like them, or my boss wants me to do this assignment like they would do this report, as an example. Why would your son or daughter feel any different? You're doing the same thing to them, right? So consider giving them critique and feedback in incremental steps, okay? So if they are writing a paper and you're grading that paper or you're reviewing that paper and you're doing all your marks on it, consider focusing on one area. If it's going to be mechanics, let's do mechanics for this week. If it's going to be grammar, let's focus on grammar. If it's going to be sentence structure, let's do sentence structure. Don't do all of it at one time because it can be frustrating, overwhelming, and create fear and reluctance and just annoyance for your child. For children, I would say between pre-K and third grade, who may not be ready or enthusiastic about putting their thoughts on paper, allow them to narrate their sentences, allow them to narrate their stories to you, and then you jot them down. You jot their ideas down. So if you're going through the brainstorming phase, have them just tell you ideas, write it on note cards, put it up on the board, or write it on note cards and place it in front of them when they're done telling you all their ideas. And then you want to read what they've said, and then you're going to work with them to determine what really should be in the story, and then have them narrate that story to you using their creativity and their imagination, because kids are naturally, the majority of kids are naturally very imaginative. They just get really reluctant and fearful when they have to put that imagination into words and then translate it into words and then put those words onto paper where they may not even know what proper sentence structure is, or how to properly spell the words or the mechanics of a sentence, and they're getting overwhelmed. So write it down for them, read it back to them, go through the writing process with them orally, and then go from there. Everything doesn't have to be written by the student. And even with your older students, you can do that. Have them narrate a short story so that the story is just flowing and the ideas are coming, and then you're writing it down for them. And once you write it down for them, you can give it to them and say, does this represent what you were saying? If it doesn't, go ahead and let's revise that. You revise that and continue the writing process. But again, as your children begin the writing process from like pre-K, 3, 4 years old to maybe the third grade, consider jotting it down for them and allowing them to narrate while you write. Another tip, please don't give dumb assignments. maybe there's a better word for dumb. But students, if they're not natural writers and they don't just do it just to do it, students don't like to write about topics that they don't care about, they don't know anything about, they don't have any experience with, okay? So as the students are older, maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, of course you're going to teach them about writing prompts where sometimes they have a predetermined title or predetermined writing prompt and they have to write with that, right? But before, I would say 6th grade and under, consider free writing. Let them write about what they want to write about. Allow them to write about a cartoon that they love or an episode that they love. Have them create their own cartoon characters and a story, a series of stories behind that one cartoon character that they are creating. Allow them to write about, they like trains, let them write about trains. If they're interested in a particular historical or a science topic, let them write about that. Let them choose what they want to write about. And as they get in the upper grades, of course, you can make it more formal and you can give them predetermined prompts, but still allow them to write and express themselves based on what best interests them. Don't use writing as busy work or something to do, or just you're pulling out a topic from the air because your children have to write, so let me just give them something to write about. That's what creates fear. That's what creates people who normally say, I do not like writing, I don't want to write. Just like with readers, that's what creates reluctant readers. Reading of you giving them reading assignments about things they really don't care about. We tell them, hey, read this story, short story, or read this prompt, answer these questions for reading comprehension. All they're doing is searching and finding. They're not really comprehending what they're reading. They're just going back to the paragraph and selecting exactly what the sentence says. So is that really comprehension? So for reading, for writing, and for comprehension, allow your students to be exposed to the things that they like, the books that they like, the prompts that they like, the topics that they like. Allow them to be vested and become excited about those areas. The next tip, do you need grammar to be a good writer? There are debates about this. What do I think? No, you don't need good grammar to be a good writer. A good writer, and what is a good writer, right? It's based on everyone's definition. I think a student needs to have a memory bank of vocabulary. I think they need to be read to. I think they need to be a reader, someone who enjoys reading or someone who's in the habit of reading. I think what makes up a person who writes well is someone who can pull from experiences and from their memory bank. May it be through their own life experiences, the experiences of other people, or the experiences that they encounter when they read literature. Does the literature have to be this thought-provoking moral book? No, they can read twaddle if that's totally up to you. Every parent is different. There are debates in the homeschool community about twaddle versus good literature. Let your children read what they want to read, but give them a good variety of it. If they want to read some twaddle, as long as it's age appropriate and there's nothing that's against your standards or beliefs, let them read it. And then assign them some books based on what you want them to read for various topics. Some moral rich books, some thicker type books, thinner books, again, including things that you want them to read about and including some things that they're interested about. Having all that stuff in your memory bank is what will bring the child to a point of having something to write about. Because in many cases, children don't know where to start. They don't know what to write about. So when you say, hey, write an essay or write something about something that you like, either they don't know what they like, they don't know where to start, or they don't know the words to use to express themselves in a more vivid manner. So consider this as well. When you're giving your child an assignment that based on a topic that they like or a book that they like or something of that nature, consider going through the writing process in a very incremental step. So first, let's say you have them free write about XYZ. If they say, I like trucks, or if they want to write about trucks, or if they are learning something new and they want to write about what that is, right? Have them write about it, free write. And then you're going to come back within a few days or a week, and then you're going to come back to that writing, and you're going to reread it and kind of see, does it still make sense? If it doesn't make sense, how can they elaborate it? Talk about what adjectives are, the purpose of adjectives. Talk about decorations. How can we beautify our sentence or our story, taking one sentence at a time? As you're going through the process of doing this, you're teaching them about the different parts of grammar, the ones that are, not all of them, but the ones that are needed to make that sentence or story better. You can bring in cliffhangers, or the different ways to hook the reader. How can we hook the reader? What does a cliffhanger mean? Do we want to add any cliffhangers here? How can we add cliffhangers? Bounce ideas off them. Allow them to talk to you, and you write the notes down, and you can go back and retype it or rewrite it for them depending on their age. If they're, 4th grade, 5th grade, they can do that on their own. But the whole point is to teach grammar and language arts through the process of their one free writing piece, okay? And then you talk about, do we have a good opener, a good closer? You can talk about how to create a title. Again, you're not doing all of this in 1 week, and maybe not even 1 month. It may take you a month to complete the writing process for that particular free writing piece. And then you can do it for another one. And then the time span will get shorter and shorter because you've taught the concepts previously with their first or second original piece. And then they're remembering that type of stuff in order to bring it in within their next piece. Also, consider having a checklist for writing. So based on what you have noticed your child is struggling in throughout the writing process, write a little checklist that says, check for capitalization, check for punctuation, check for adjectives. You're not going to give them a checklist of 50 items or not even 10 items at one time. As you're teaching them the writing process, and as you're teaching, or as you're integrating grammar and mechanics into the process, then you're going to increase what's on your checklist. If you started off with, let's focus on capitalization, and you talk about what is capitalization, why do we capitalize, what do we capitalize, what are proper and improper nouns, as an example. Once you talk about that, then you go back to it, and then you are actually adding that particular item to your checklist. And then let's say in a few days or next week, you guys are focusing on adjectives and verbs, both, one or the other, or both. Then you start talking about what those things are, the purpose of them. You can do sentences on the board where they're telling you a sentence and you're writing it out, or you're writing out a sentence and you're explaining the concept of adjectives and verbs to them. And then you are classifying and identifying items from the sentences that you've completed. So now you have adjectives and verbs on your checklist. And when you go back to your original, or the original piece that they wrote, then you're identifying what are the verbs and adjectives. Did they use any? Should we add any to make our story come alive and make it really rich? So again, do you need grammar to originally start off the writing process? No, you don't, but you surely can teach grammar as they are learning the writing process, right? Same thing, you can use figurative language. You can explain what figurative languages are. You can do the same with poetry. You can, as they get older, maybe 4th, 5th grade, you can start talking about dependent clauses and independent clauses. You can work all that stuff in within your child's original writing piece, right? And that's just getting them in the habit of putting their thoughts into words, right? And then putting those words onto paper. That's just getting them in the process of thinking that way. And then of course you giving them vocabulary words. Vocabulary words throughout the years, I think, is extremely important, and that just increases their language, their ability to think of words throughout the writing process. And if they can't think of a word, or they don't know the meaning of a word, they can always go to a dictionary or a thesaurus. Here's another tip. When your children are younger, I would say third grade through sixth grade, maybe fifth grade, up to you. Create homonym books. Okay, create homonym books. Create mini books, not big books. Or you can create a lap book, right? You can create a lap book of what you're teaching them in terms of grammar and the meaning of each word. You use lap book or notebooking for that. You can create mini homonym books where they can use as references. You can create a book of onomatopoeias, a book of alliteration. You can just create mini books that teach them words that they can use to express themselves more vividly, or words that sound the same but they're spelled differently and they mean different things, or words that sound the same, spelled the same, but mean different things, like orange and orange, right? Create little books, and that's just expanding their vocabulary. That's just expanding ways that they can further express themselves and make their stories and sentences and poems come alive through the writing process. And when you are reading aloud to them, remember that reading may not just be enough to create good writers, right? When you're reading aloud to them, make connections as you're reading. As you are learning, or as they are learning, and as you are teaching them various concepts like homonyms, onomatopoeias, alliteration, similes, metaphors, and things of that nature, if you are reading aloud to them and you come across those items, whether you are in the process of teaching it to them, or even if you haven't even touched on that yet, you can bring it up. Aha, let me read this sentence to you again. And you read it again. Do you know that's called alliteration or simile or metaphor or onomatopoeia? And you explain what that is, right? So as you're reading, you don't stop and do that for every single thing. Do it for the ones that are really interesting within your story, but make links and connections with them. That's another way of not only teaching grammar, but also teaching them that they can use some of these things within their own sentences and their stories. Another tip, as you are teaching your children how to write, and again, you're not doing this in a year or a month, guys. This is going to take years to develop. So if your children are in the elementary ages, start from there. If your children are in middle school ages, start from there. If your students, sons and daughters, are, 8th grade and up, you can still start from here, but you're going to have to throw in some essay writing and research papers a little bit quicker than normal, only because they're starting a little bit later. But during the writing process, you may want to teach your children about what good description is. And good descriptions, in my opinion, are those descriptions that utilize the 5 senses, as many senses as possible, so this reader is really hooked into what you're saying and they just can't stop reading because they want to know what's going on. You make them feel like they're in the story, You're using words that appeals to their senses. So when you're writing a sentence about, you baking a cake, you may talk about how it smells and how it waters your taste buds and how it smells like flowers that are, I don't know, you can create it on your own, but you're basically using the 5 senses to appeal to the reader, and that just makes it more vivid, it makes it come alive, and it makes it more interesting for the reader. Let's talk about spelling. Is spelling really required for a good writer? Again, there are debates on that. If they're typing, it's called spell check, guys. But if they are writing, allow your students to write in their original form. And then as you get to the edit stage, that's when you can kind of look for spelling and make your changes. But don't get into the habit of, having your child spell everything properly as they're writing. That creates a block with the writer. That causes the writer to stop being imaginative and stop thinking and allowing the process to flow naturally as to what they want to say in their story, because they're so concerned about, is this spelled right? Does this sentence make sense? They can do all of that in the revision stage and the editing stage. So let's leave that for then. Allow them to properly review and edit their original pieces or any piece at that time. And if a word is not spelled properly, teach them how to find out how to properly spell that word. And if they are making the same mistake over and over again, then build a spelling word list from the things that they are writing, the things you've noticed that they've misspelled. So don't just arbitrarily create a spelling list. Why not create a spelling list and even a vocabulary list based on what you're reading to them, what they are reading, based on what they're learning in science and in history, words that they come across that they don't know how to spell or they don't understand what it means, or words that they normally use within their own writing pieces. Use that for spelling lists and vocabulary lists and things of that nature. How often should your children write? There's some misconceptions that my child has to write something every single day, or my child has to write something every single week. If you want your child to go through the writing process of brainstorming, possibly doing an outline, doing a first draft, maybe even a second draft based on their revisions, and then they're going to do edits and do another draft and do a final copy and then type it, that takes more than a day and it takes more than a week, okay? So consider giving your children 3 to 4 weeks for each writing assignment, okay? So maybe give them 3 weeks to complete the writing assignment, give them a week for a break, and then give them something else to do, okay? So again, your child doesn't have to write every single day. They don't have to write every single week. Give them a longer period of time to think through the process, translate their thoughts into words, and put that information down onto paper. It may actually prove to be the best method or approach to helping your children write. If you want them to write something every day, you have to ask yourself why. What's the purpose? It's not to be a better writer, because we just talked about how your child can become a better writer, right? If you want them to write something every day, maybe it's because you want them to write about how they're feeling. That's different. You want them to write in a journal how they're feeling for that particular day, or you may want them to write a summary of what they did for the day. But again, everything should have a purpose. Why are they doing that? Okay. You may want them to do copy work. And all those things that I've just mentioned, in my opinion, it does two things. One, it helps with penmanship. And two, it helps with putting thoughts onto paper and finding the right words to express yourself. And all of that combined together can help your child become a better writer when they're writing their original pieces. Okay. So you can also, in the later years, you can incorporate different types of writing. So far we talked about free writing, right? So you may want to incorporate some essay writing, expository, personal, persuasive, argumentative, depending on the grade level or age. Have your children start writing those types of essays, but again, teach them how to do it by first modeling it, teaching them how to do it, the process that they should go about doing it. Create some activities that they can use to help them put the pieces and the puzzles together to write a good essay. Talk about the process and all the pieces that work together. It may take you a month or two to do the teaching and the modeling, and then you have them do it on their own. Same thing for research paper. A lot of kids are interested in so many different topics and subjects. Instead of you telling them what to write about, ask them what do they want to learn about. Younger kids are really excited about nature and about the environment. So the clouds, why does it rain? Do birds sing? Or why do they sing? Or why is grass green and the trees green? What is a rainbow? At that age, you can help them understand how to research without calling it a research paper. Okay? As the child gets older and they give you their own topics, or you give them a topic that they'll be interested in. I would give topics that the kid is not interested in like 7th, 8th grade, to teach them how to just pull ideas and research and write. But before 7th grade, try to give them stuff that sparks interest and things that they enjoy. But then you can start talking about formal research papers and how to properly research, the tools you can utilize to gather information and fact find and analyze the information and present it both in writing and orally. You can also talk about source citation and about utilizing various sources and how to make sure that the sources you're utilizing has accurate information and not using one source and things of that nature. So you can dive into that stuff a little later in the years. So guys, that's it. The video is about 33 minutes long, and I didn't really intend for it to be that long. But if you have any questions for me, leave them in the comment section below. I'll try my best to get back to you. And as always, be blessed and make it a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.